And welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Special guest today, B.Tucker, and we're having a very wide-ranging discussion. And you know, a couple of things we wanted to talk about that remain are, you know, what's going to happen to the price of silver, and what's our time frame for that? I mean, what are we looking at? Because silver has been lagging the gold move, and a lot of us that are precious metals people, myself included, you know, we've owned silver for a long time, you know, some of us in physical quantities, and we've been kind of holding what has been, you know, a paperweight for a while. I mean, obviously it's worth something, but I know I bought in a fair bit of the silver. I bought above $30 an ounce at one point when it was in its previous kind of bull run. And, you know, so we've been holding it, waiting for it to come back, hoping that it's going to do what it did before again.
So one thing we do in the professional side of this is that we're always watching something called the gold-silver ratio, and this is our biggest tool for knowing when to sell and when to buy. And all you do if you're at home is you look up the price of gold and silver online, very easy to find, and you divide the silver price into the gold price. Now, historically, that number is about 65. Okay, so gold should be worth 65 times silver. It recently is the highest it's been in 27 years. It was something like 95, which means that silver is unbelievably cheap. Yeah. And then gold started going higher, so it started getting even more protracted. Now, that means that it's a time to get into that. Now, when you were talking about when you bought, okay, if you go back and look then, it was down at like 40, right, which means that it's not a good time, you know, to buy. So on the professional side, you know, we're acquiring when we see that number high, and we're letting go when we see it low. And usually takes, you know, a couple of years to make that move. So you have lots of time. It's not something you have to rush out and do this week or something. Maybe you can start watching this. So if somebody wanted to get into silver, then you would advise them to start now, but move in slowly. Is that I mean, you can now. It's kind of fair, happy hunting. I mean, you can get in there now, and I don't think that maybe you have short-term problem for a couple of months. Maybe something happens in the market, but I think big picture speaking, I don't think it's a high-risk time to get involved in that. You know, what's tough is that you pay a lot of transaction costs. You know, so what I do is I've acquired a lot of royalties in the silver business, and not everyone can do that. However, you know, my stock does trade publicly, so people can look at the stock and can buy in. We have 44 royalties now, and most of the current royalties are all silver. So it's a much cheaper way than, because when you buy an ounce of silver for $17, you pay the broker like $2 or $3 for the coin. It's really expensive. I'm not saying it's a ripoff. I mean, it's good to have some coins, but it's something to consider. Whereas when we buy the royalty, you know, silver goes up $1 on 1 million ounces of silver. Our cash flow goes up $1 million right away, and our overhead doesn't go up. So it's a much cleaner way to play that. Right. Yeah, you're dealing with it almost in an industrial scale versus the individual coin. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. We're getting it every single month. You know, we're having a physical silver credit, you know, delivered. So. And Metalla is doing well right now, and as we would expect. I mean, and it's kind of, frankly, lagging the move a little bit. It is lagging the move, so that'll catch up. Yeah. So I don't know when that'll catch up, but it'll catch up fairly quickly. I mean, I bought more stock Friday. I've bought stock almost consistently since we went public. I looked the other day. My average rate of return since we went public is 50% per year for the last 3 years. So that's pretty good. I mean, I don't know where I'm going to beat that. And you know, load sharking, maybe. Exactly. I mean, I'm on the board of directors, so I'm constantly well aware of everything that the company's doing. I'm very involved, and so nobody's in a better position than me to be comfortable. So, how hard is it to find a silver dime out there nowadays? It's not impossible. I mean, you can find them. Yeah, you can find them. I mean, if you know what you're looking for, because it's complicated. Everybody thinks it's pre-1964. Yeah, it's sort of true. I mean, each coin had a different year where they reduced the silver and then they went to zero. Eventually, imagine that meeting. Well, what else can we use? Well, we use some nickel. Aluminum? Can we use that? I mean, the cheapest. What's the cheapest thing we got? Right. I mean, there's no reason to put this silver in these coins anymore. Right. But there was silver in the coinage for a long time. Well, just like there was real nickel in the nickels up until a couple of years ago, and they took that out finally. By the way, nickel price is exploding. It's over $7 a pound now, and it's going to go even higher because they realize there's a shortage of nickel for electric vehicle batteries, which is the key component. People think lithium ion, but lithium's just a salt. You know, this not much lithium, speaking to the cost per battery.
Okay.
There's actually the nickel. The new batteries are called 811, and 8 is the amount of nickel, and 1 is cobalt, and you go manganese and all the way down. But it used to be lower than that, and so the new generation of batteries has a lot of nickel, and there's a huge concern now. Of course, we knew about this prior. We actually have a nickel company. It's private. It'll go public later this year, but we've been acquiring royalties on nickel mines for exactly this reason. This is starting to look like a wise move. So
only 2 minutes left. Are you going to touch on?
Yeah, let me just throw this at you on Epstein, because I heard you guys talking about some of that, and I generally subscribe to everything that was said in terms of what I think. But a couple of my friends who are really smart people have this. They've gotten this idea in their head that this was a faked incident, and that Epstein was not in fact suicided or didn't commit suicide in jail. And again, I tend to think that he was suicided. And, we talked some in the break about the Clinton body count. You look back at all the people that were closely affiliated with the Clintons who've died by suicide.
Bad luck.
Extremely bad luck. Lots of plane crashes, lots of, just everybody's got bad luck.
Single car accidents. Yeah.
It's unbelievable when you really look at the list in total. But how about this idea? Because they wheeled the body out on some kind of a gurney. Now, the photographs that were taken of that body actually turned out to be photographs of the body at the hospital, not coming out of the prison. But a couple of things struck me. One is that do you wheel a dead person around without covering them up? I thought typically that was considered disrespectful of the dead. I mean, they typically cover them. So if Epstein was dead, why would they wheel the guy out just enough so that you could get a few camera shots of his face? Another thing that I've seen on the internet, and this appears to have some legs to it, which is comparing the facial structure of an actual Jeffrey Epstein photograph with the person who was wheeled out on the gurney. And, I'm no expert in that area, but they appear not to be exactly the same face. There's a different nose and a different ear, and those are the two most prominent features that you can make out. So it does not appear to be Jeffrey Epstein on that gurney, at least as far as I can tell. But what is the interesting thought of, if Epstein was this high-level blackmailer, wouldn't he have had a bunch of dead man switches placed around the world? In other words, wouldn't he have taken the information that he had about these powerful people and placed it with his agents, whoever they may be, throughout the world and said, look, if anything ever happens to me, if I turn up dead, you send this to the New York Times. And I'm just throwing that out. I mean, pick another legitimate news organization. But you send this to the news organizations, and you make sure they get a hold of this, and this gets publicized. That's what's called a dead man switch. And so everybody that's saying, hey, maybe Epstein didn't really die in this situation, maybe he either bought his way out or maybe he was sprung by his intelligence community masters because of the fact that if they didn't get him out of there alive, then these dead man switches would have been activated. And that he could have contacted his dead man switches and said, hey, don't release the information based on the suicide, etc. So that was kind of what I wanted to just throw out there for consideration. It's not something that definitely rings true to me, but it certainly seems like a possibility in this situation. Folks, thanks for listening. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.